Justin Kinner Show. Right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. You want hot takes?
No, I'm not going to apologize to Ryan Day. Everything we said about Ryan Day up into the playoffs was true.
Not bad. Come on, Kenner. You can do better than that.
To be fair, of all the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, Joe Burrow is the least accomplished.
Getting better.
1,000,000%. I 1,000,000% believe that the Dayton Flyers are afraid of the Wright State Raiders. That's why they come up with every excuse in the book not to play them.
There it is. The hottest take of them all. It's the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers, live on 1410 ESPN Radio.
Remind me again why anyone in this city likes the NFL. Can anyone help me out with that just a little bit? Like, we're all just so miserable all the time. Browns fans, we're miserable all the time. Bengals fans, you're miserable all the time. What in the blue hell is there to be even excited about? It drives me up the wall. Like, we just sit there and we wait all summer. We wait all NFL offseason to get to a season that we know somehow, some way, in a way that we don't know how it's going to come about, is going to disappoint us. And here we are 6 weeks into the NFL season, and the seasons are done for both teams. The Bengals are done. The Browns are done. And yet we have a lot of season left. We have all of October, all of November, all of December. And then all the good teams, they're part of this thing called the Cool Kids Club. They kind of get together and get to hang out in this thing called the playoffs, something that Browns and Bengals fans, well, it's all foreign to us as of late. Well, speak for yourself, Kinner. The Bengals have at least been to a Super Bowl in the last 5 years. Yeah, well, the Browns have made the playoffs more recently than the Bengals. So, like, again, we're just... my bad team's better than your bad team. Like, this is all pathetic. It is. And yesterday was just a big day of just nothing but pathetic for both teams. The Bengals are pathetic. The Browns are pathetic. Being a fan of the NFL, being a fan of Ohio NFL teams, pathetic. It's frustrating. But we welcome you in, and we're going to try and get through it together. Happy Monday. I hope you all had a great weekend. As you could tell, I enjoyed my Sunday, kind of. I would really like to enjoy the Bengals losing as much as they do. I would love to enjoy it, but it's really hard for me to sit there and enjoy your team struggles when my team continues to struggle. And it's a mess. It's a mess. College basketball starts soon, so we have that. Luckily, we have the Ohio State Buckeyes on the college football front. Maybe the Reds might do something kind of crazy this offseason. Maybe the Guardians will do something crazy this offseason and kind of take us all by surprise. How about we just, try to find the positives? If we sit here and try to find the positives, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot to talk about when it comes to the National Football League, but we're going to try because it's week 6 and I have to somehow find content for all of November, December. So I have to pretend that there is something interesting to talk about when it comes to the Browns and the Bengals. So let's get to it. Who do you guys want to open up with? We want to open up with the Bengals as they continue to get, beat week in and week out. Or do you want to talk about the Browns, who I continue to try to find ways to be optimistic about this team and maybe try to find a silver lining of where they can maybe sneak in a win here or there, and they just continue to beat themselves. I mean, well, the Steelers beat them yesterday. I don't even, we're going to talk about Mike Tomlin in a moment. Mike Tomlin decided to use some airtime today to take a shot at the Browns. The Browns embarrassed themselves a lot. They don't need a head coach that won a Super Bowl well over a decade ago, has been the face of one of the most underachieving franchises over the last decade, and wants to scold the Browns on the way that they handled something. He's only mad because the quarterback that the Browns traded to the Bengals is going to probably beat him on Thursday night. I am going to give you guys a little bit of a secret here, or reveal a little bit of a secret. I'm going to be a Bengals fan on Thursday. I am going to be the biggest Joe Flacco fan in the world. I hope that Jamar Chase and T. Higgins pop off. I hope that the defense all of a sudden shows up and shuts down Mike Tomlin and his stupid Pittsburgh Steelers. I think Mike Tomlin, who I can't stand, might have just made me put the Steelers as the most hated team in this division above your Cincinnati Bengals, which makes me closer to a Bengals fan than I've ever been in my life, by the way. So there you go. Ron Howard, funny as it sounds, Deshaun Watson might save your season. Stop it, Ron Howard. Please stop. We'll get to the Browns in a moment. Well, let's open up with the Cincinnati Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals, yesterday, they lose their 4th straight. They started the season 2-0. An ugly win over the Browns, and an ugly hang on desperately and try to find a way to edge out the Jaguars to improve to 2-0. But ever since, it's been a little ugly for your Cincinnati Bengals, of course. The Cincinnati Bengals, had the Packers yesterday on the road. They were a 15.5-point dog. I said last week that I think anytime in the NFL you get to a 15-point line in anything, any team can get blown out. We see blowouts all the time. The Bengals have been blown out for weeks now. I mean, it's kind of crazy that you guys lose by 9 and you feel good about it because that's how bad football has been over the last 3 weeks for the Cincinnati Bengals. But 27-18, the final. They were shut out in the first half. All 18 of their points coming in the second half. And then, what was a 60-plus yard field goal would have been a record for Money Mac had he been able. I mean, he did drain it, obviously, but LaFleur called the timeout right before. So, that would have been maybe 27-21 the final if that was the case. But either way, Bengals shut out in the first half. Packers have a 10-0 lead 1 half in, and then all of a sudden, they outscored the Packers in the second half, and the Packers get to hold on for their third win of the season coming out of the bye week. Keep in mind the Packers got off to a dominant start to the season. They look like the Super Bowl favorites, of course, and then they lose to the Cleveland Browns, and then they put up 40 points against the Dallas Cowboys, but that game ends up resulting in a tie. And then the Packers get to the bye week, and then they have 2 weeks to prepare for a Cincinnati Bengals team that was one of the worst in the National Football League and still is. But let's take a look at how all kind of this unfolded a little bit as far as the game went on. I didn't really know what to expect with Joe Flacco. The one thing I did, let me rephrase that. There was a lot of optimism and hope that Joe Flacco was all of a sudden going to turn things around in Cincinnati. And I thought it was a little comical to hear a lot of Bengals fans say that, there's going to be a big drastic turnaround. Joe Flacco is way better than Jake Browning. I said that from the beginning. I said that there was going to be an improvement in the offense with Joe Flacco at quarterback, but not enough of an improvement to where all of a sudden you're going to start stringing together wins and making a push for the playoffs. But Joe Flacco makes throws. He is a professional quarterback. He is a seasoned veteran, Super Bowl MVP winning quarterback. He knows what he's doing. And when you give him weapons like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, he is going to figure it out. And figure it out is what Joe Flacco did. I thought he looked like a 40-year-old quarterback, but some of the throws he made, you were not going to get from Jake Browning. Some of the throws Flacco made, you're not going to get from any other backup quarterback in the National Football League. So for that right there, that's a win in itself, just getting that type of production. Joe Flacco looked like a professional quarterback yesterday, which is something that the Bengals had not had in weeks since Joe Burrow went out in week 2. So from that perspective, the Bengals look crisper and cleaner offensively. Not efficient, they just looked crisper and cleaner offensively. And I don't think that even in the areas of the offense in which the Bengals could still look better, I don't think that that's a Joe Flacco flaw. I truly believe that with their inability to protect the quarterback and inability to run the football, they would still obviously be better with Joe Burrow. I just don't think I think that this is just a mirrored season from last year with Joe Burrow, where you're going to be in every game, but you're going to lose a lot of games and probably miss the playoffs. Joe Flacco is going to keep this team tighter in games than Jake Browning, but they're still going to lose a lot of games. I liked what I saw from Flacco yesterday. Completed 29 of his 45 pass attempts. Thought the offense look, everyone was making such a big deal. Not even me. I wasn't even making fun of the Bengals. They got shut out in the first half. Everyone expected Joe Flacco to come in and just everything look immediately better. What I liked about the Bengals offense is that it looked very, very rusty in the first quarter, slightly better in the second quarter. In the second half, it was a different animal. All 18 of their points coming in the second half. And this is a quarterback that was just traded. He was in, he was in London with the Browns as the backup, gets traded, immediately gets back, gets traded, has to get to Cincinnati, and immediately get to work on learning the offense and getting, acquainted with his new teammates. So with that, I think that he looked more than fine considering those circumstances. What I liked is that him and Jamar Chase had that great rapport. Jamar Chase, another great game for him, 10 catches, 94 yards, and a touchdown. My big criticism on Jamar Chase in recent years has been that, it appeared as if his game is very dependent on Joe Burrow because, statistically, when Joe Burrow's not throwing him the football, statistically, he's not a good wide receiver. We know he's an elite wide receiver, arguably the best wide receiver in football. But statistically, he disappears when Joe Burrow's not throwing him the football. That's been a different case the last couple of weeks. All of a sudden, he's kind of opened up a little bit and has just been a completely different, target. We saw that when Joe Burrow went out, he had, 5 catches for 50 yards, no touchdown. 5 catches for 23 yards, no touchdowns. And then in Detroit in the second half, he kind of woke up a bit, 6 catches, 110 yards, 2 touchdowns. Yesterday, 10 catches, 94 yards, and a touchdown. So Jamar Chase is back to being a focal point of the offense. And I think when you have a quarterback like Joe Flacco, you're going to get more production out of him, and the Bengals will have a chance. The Bengals are a threat offensively because of Joe Flacco and Jamar Chase now. The problem is they are a threat because of Joe Flacco and Jamar Chase. The problem is they are only a threat because of those two, because everything else is atrocious. Guys, they can't run the football. And I know I'm annoying when I bring that up all the time, but my goodness, Chase Brown, 9 carries for 42 yards. Samaje Perine, 6 carries for 16 yards. As a team, they had a combined rushing of 55 yards on the evening. Like their longest run of the afternoon was a 13-yard burst from Chase Brown. Outside of that, there was nothing else. There was no burst in the run game. There's no pop in the pass game outside of Jamar Chase. T. Higgins pulled down a couple big ones as well. Obviously, 5 catches, 62 yards, but nothing 35 mil a year worthy, if you will. And that's not a shot at him. It's just this offense with this line and the inability to run the football is bad. But the one takeaway I do have about that Bengals game yesterday is that it felt different and it looked different. This is where I was, and I say this every week. Zach Taylor's not a top 5 coach in football. Where I've always defended Zach Taylor is that his teams remain competitive with or without Joe Burrow. And the reason I started checking out on Zach Taylor is because his team started to quit on him. When you lose to the Vikings 48-10, when you lose to the Broncos 28-3, when you give up 38 points to the Lions and your offense has to make some desperate comeback attempt in the second half just to make the score look respectable, we all know they got destroyed by the Lions. When your team starts quitting on your coach, that's when I'm out on your coach. My positive takeaway after seeing Joe Flacco out there yesterday, those vibes seemed there was just a sense of belief once again. That locker room started to buy in. The problem was that because of Zach Taylor? I don't think so. I think it's because Joe Flacco is a cool and calming individual that I think brings that kind of steadiness to the sideline that I think gives this team the confidence, to go out there and compete. And I think that's a big deal. I think that's a huge deal as this Cincinnati Bengals team moves forward and tries to find a way to maybe string together a little bit of a run. The good thing for the Bengals is they started the season 2-0. So they're 2-4. But you get a win on Thursday night, you're back to 3-4. You're a game under 500, and I think you're still very much in this. I liked what I saw from Joe Flacco. It's exactly what I expected to see. He's not Joe Burrow. He's not a top 5 starting quarterback in the NFL, but he's going to do just enough to maximize the weapons that are out there offensively. The offensive line's still a concern. The lack of a run, and when I say lack of a run game, the fact that they don't have a run game at all is a major concern. And you guys could say that the defense looked better yesterday. I thought that they made some situational plays, but they're still not better. I mean, the Packers moved the ball at will. They got where they wanted on the field when they wanted. There's nothing about the Bengals that screams good team to me. But the thing about it is, you look around the AFC, there's a lot of teams similar to Cincinnati that also aren't screaming, oh, we're a guaranteed playoff team. Kansas City's 3-3. They're still on the outside looking into the playoffs right now. New England's 4-2. They're sitting in that 7th spot. How believable are they still? Denver's 4-2. I'm still not sold on them. Jacksonville, they lost. They're 4-2. I'm not sold on them. The Chargers are absolutely beat up right now. They're 4-2 though. But again, until I see them get healthy, I'm not going to be sold on them either. And then there's the lame Pittsburgh Steelers, who I'm not sold on either. So we'll get to them coming up in a moment. And the Colts, good for them. They continue to find a way to keep on winning. But man, oh man, the Bengals 2-4. We'll see how they progress. I'm curious how Thursday night's going to look. I think considering when you got Joe Flacco, I think yesterday felt okay. I think that's what you expected. I don't know how much. I mean, the fact that you didn't get blown out by 15 plus points like Vegas and everyone expected. The fact that Flacco and Jamar Chase seem to have a very good rapport. There was no, Joe Flacco didn't turn it over. That was the big concern about Joe Flacco, is the fact that, okay, yes, he's going to make some throws that you're not going to get from any other backup quarterback in the NFL, but he's also going to turn it over. You moved on from Jake Browning, who has thrown the 2nd most interceptions in the National Football League. You moved on from him because of those interceptions, and you moved on from him to the guy that's 3rd in the NFL in interceptions. So because of that, that was also a concern, and that looked cleaner yesterday as well. Pittsburgh is at Cincinnati on Thursday Night Football, and the Bengals are a 5.5-point dog at home. They're a 5.5-point dog at home. Adam Selzner says, I'd argue Stefanski lost the locker room since the end of last season. We're going to get into the Browns coming up in a moment. I'm not happy with them. We'll talk about that. So, Adam also says, watching the Steelers against the Browns yesterday, the Bengals can win that game on Thursday. Oh, I very much agree. And I've never been closer to being a Bengals fan than I am right now. In fact, I know for a fact on Thursday night, I will be a ginormous Bengals fan on Thursday. I'm going to hoo-day it up. I can't stand Mike Tomlin. I can't stand the Pittsburgh Steelers. I can't stand the fact that they are, 4-2 last year. We saw that season crumble and fall away to where they missed the playoffs. They're 4-1 this year, and Mike Tomlin's out there running his mouth about other organizations in the AFC North as if he hasn't been a constant embarrassment, underachieving the way that they have year in and year out, since they won a Super Bowl a decade plus ago. Can't disrespect that. He's won a Super Bowl, but they've been living off that for 12, 13, 14, 15, decade plus since. He's going to run his mouth about the other teams in the AFC North, all because he's mad because the Browns sent a weapon to Cincinnati that's going to put them in position to win on Thursday. What do the Steelers do? What do the Steelers do good? They underachieve. They're one of the best underachieving teams in the NFL, Tony. That's what they do good as far as that's concerned. But all right, good stuff. Happy Monday. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. All right, we'll step away for a few moments. Mike Tomlin ran his mouth about the Cleveland Browns during his presser earlier today. And I guess I understand what he's saying, but I don't understand where he's coming from. I get what he's questioning. I just don't get how it impacts him. And the one way that I think it does impact him, I think makes him sound like a whiny crybaby and soft in this particular situation. So we're going to talk about all of that when we come back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers.
The Justin Kinner Show. Right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. ESPN 1410 Wing AM weather.
All right, and we are back. I'm Justin Kinner with you here, Dayton's ESPN Radio 1410 Wing AM. We opened up, of course, Bengals Thursday night football action coming up this Thursday as they welcome in the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the Cincinnati Bengals, of course, coming off of a tough loss on the road at Green Bay, a game in which they were a 15.5-point dog. They end up losing 27-18. They get shut out in the first half, down 10-0, 2 quarters in. All 18 of their points coming in the second half. They outscored the Green Bay Packers 18-17 in the second half. But again, just the offense not able to get it going in the first half, and the defense just letting Green Bay kind of do whatever they want, put them in position. Kept them out of position to be able to have a real good chance of winning that football game. Jordan Love completed 19 of 26 pass attempts for 259 yards and a touchdown. Josh Jacobs, 18 carries, 93 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. As far as Joe Flacco in his Bengals debut, he threw the ball 45 times, completing 29 of those pass attempts for 219 yards, averaged just a hair under 5 yards completion, and threw for 2 touchdowns as well. 1 touchdown to Jamar Chase and the other one to Tanner Hudson. Jamar Chase, 10 catches, 94 yards and a touchdown. As we talked about, T. Higgins, 5 catches, 62 yards. Noah Fant, 4 catches, 27 yards. Mike Gesicki, by the way, it was announced earlier today that the Bengals do expect to be without him for a decent amount of time. No timetable, at least any reporting that I've come across. They haven't put a hard count on that. We'll keep you updated on that. As far as the Bengals and their ability to run the football, well, they don't have the ability to run the football. Chase Brown, 9 carries, 42 yards. Samaje Perine, 6 carries for 16 yards. No touchdowns on the ground, and as a team, a combined 15 yards rushing on the afternoon. So now the Cincinnati Bengals, they turn their attention towards the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you look at the standings right now, and obviously you can't look at them, it's radio, but the bottom line is we sit here right now and how this playoff picture is kind of shaping up. I get it, we're only 6 weeks into the season, but the Colts in the AFC are sitting at the very top at 5-1. They've been a very pleasant surprise thanks to Lou Anarumo and that fantastic defense. And, of course, Daniel Jones has been he's this year's Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold went to the Vikings last year. They expected him to be a solid veteran contributor to compete for the starting job against J.J. McCarthy. Well, J.J. McCarthy ends up getting hurt in preseason, missing the entire season. So they had to roll out with Sam Darnold. No one, including me, felt confident that was going to work. It worked. They lost 2 games. Obviously, they got booted out of the playoffs pretty early, but Sam Darnold was a pleasant surprise last year. Daniel Jones seems to be that guy here in 2025. But the Colts 5-1, sitting atop the AFC. The Steelers at 4-1, sitting atop the AFC North. They have the 2 spot in the playoff picture right now. The Bills 4-1 in the East, sitting at number 3. The Chargers 4-2 atop that division. They are absolutely banged up, and it's been pretty fascinating to watch what Justin Herbert's been able to do with all his receivers hurt, his offensive line, all backups basically, the defense banged up, and yet somehow, some way, 4-2 sitting atop the division a month and a half into the season. Jacksonville coming off of a loss. They're 4-2 on the season, sitting in that 5 spot. Broncos and Patriots 4-2 at 6 and 7. The Chiefs 3-3. They get a big win over the Lions last night. The Chiefs might have figured it out. The Chiefs were a little sluggish to start the season. They figured it out. They look like that Super Bowl contending Chiefs team. They've been to 3 straight Super Bowls, and they look like they're back in form to compete to get back to their 4th one. But they're 3-3, and if the playoffs started today, they wouldn't even make the playoffs. So they're the first team out. The Texans 2-3. The Bengals 2-4. Those are all the teams that the Bengals are, in that little, grouping with as far as that's concerned. So we'll keep an eye. That's going to be the big thing. So yesterday when the Cincinnati Bengals, of course, they lost, not a surprise that they lost to Green Bay. Some would say that it was a little bit of a surprise at how competitive the game ultimately became in the second half. As I mentioned, 10-0 at halftime, all 18 of the Bengals points coming in the second half. As I stated to start the show, I think that what Joe Flacco brings to the table is a calming, steady presence in the locker room. I know Jamar Chase said as much so earlier today when addressing the media. There's just a presence that he brings. If you have any other backup quarterback, it's not going to be able to bring that. He's a Super Bowl winning MVP at his age, has still found ways to help teams win football games. I mean, he took Cleveland to the playoffs 2 years ago, whenever it was. Like, he did that. The Browns that season was obviously just spiraling out of control. They call him off his couch. He goes out there and saves the Browns season. Is there enough season? Is there enough talent in Cincinnati for Joe Flacco to come save the Bengals season? I don't think that there is, but I think what he will do is keep this team competing and believing that they have a chance to win every week. One thing was for sure, that locker room, whether it was Zach Taylor or Jake Browning, they quit on somebody. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, the entire offense, the defense, everybody quit on Jake Browning and Zach Taylor over the last month since Joe Burrow, has been out. Yesterday was completely different. It was like there was just a sense of, okay, this is our final shot. Let's go out there and give it our all. And if that's the energy and that's the type of fight that the Bengals show up with each week, I don't know how many games you're going to win, but you're at least going to feel like heading into the fourth quarter that the team has a chance, which is something that you did not feel against Denver, against Minnesota, against Detroit. You felt they had a chance yesterday, and that's one thing that Joe Flacco does bring to the table, and I think that's going to stick with them moving forward. So, with that being said, next up is Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh is coming off of a win yesterday in the division over my Cleveland Browns. And yes, I'm still calling them that because I've invested too much crap talk, if that's what you want to call it, into the Browns for me to just pretend like, their miserableness doesn't exist. 23-9, the final yesterday, the Cleveland Browns at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Steelers are now 4-1 on the season. Aaron Rodgers completed 21 of his 30 pass attempts for 235 yards and 2 touchdowns. Aaron Rodgers, who everyone said there was nothing left in the tank. I was a big Aaron Rodgers believer. I didn't want to see him go to Pittsburgh for this very reason right here. I don't think that this offense is elite by any means. I think Aaron Rodgers is showing that you put him in a sturdy slot that he's going to go in there and be able to contribute and produce, and that's what he's done for Pittsburgh. They've been very consistent from the quarterback position since he arrived there. They're not great defensively. They're not great at running the football. They're not great at protecting the quarterback, but they are getting leadership from Aaron Rodgers, which is why they are in position to win games week in and week out. Do I think it's sustainable? No, I do not. I think that, yesterday they were able to beat up on a Browns team that offensively does not exist. And as that offense continues to let the fans down, to let the coaching staff down, to let themselves down, to let everybody down, that defense is starting to quit more and more on it. They're starting to quit more and more on Kevin Stefanski. Dylan Gabriel, I was excited about the Dylan Gabriel era, if you will, just something new. I wanted to see, is Joe Flacco at 40 years old, was he the problem in Cleveland? He wasn't necessarily the problem, but he sure as hell wasn't the solution. And the problem for Cleveland is I don't think that the solution, I don't think Joe Burrow is the solution. I don't think that Patrick Mahomes is. I mean, they wouldn't hurt. They might get a little more out of some of these guys, but I don't think they're getting enough more to move this team up and down the field and win football games. They literally have no one to catch the football. For the second straight week in the Dylan Gabriel era, your tight ends and running backs are your two of your top 3 pass catchers. Harold Fannin Jr., who I love, 7 catches, 81 yards. David Njoku, 3 catches, 28 yards, and a couple of those catches on big third downs, of course. But, Jerry Jeudy, 5 catches, 43 yards, whatever. Like, they have no pass catchers. And it's either they have no pass catchers or they don't have the ability to run a play that's longer than 10 yards. They had one play yesterday of 13 yards or more, and that was it. Or at least one. This offense is god awful. And then the one shiny toy that you have that actually works in Cleveland, Stefanski went completely away from. 12 carries for 36 yards. 12 carries for 36 yards. Now, to the Steelers' credit, they took a lot of the run away, but also based on the situation in the game with the Browns trailing, they had to pass a lot. But with Dylan Gabriel, who, if you have Joe Burrow and you drop back 52 times, I get it. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, elite passing quarterbacks, completely get it. But Dylan Gabriel, who is either not capable of completing a pass longer than 10 yards or is just not being put in a position to have that small of an attack offensively with your pass game and to call 52 of those non-aggressive attack plays, it just doesn't make sense to me. Quinshon Judkins touched the ball only 12 times yesterday, only 36 yards on the ground. That's not because he's not good. We know he's good. The Browns may have made a mistake moving on from Nick Chubb. The only reason it may not look like it long-term is because I think Quinshon's going to be that guy if he's not already. The offensive line that is still solid is old, and it is not, That's the other thing. Is Dylan Gabriel capable of making passes down the field, deep attacks down the field, or does he just not have enough time? There are so many things wrong with this Cleveland offense right now that it's just a big waste of one of the top defenses in the National Football League. Theo Mims says, I don't care. I'm ready for the Shedeur Sanders show. The Shedeur Sanders show is the distraction that he's been on the sideline, Theo. You think that you think that a guy that can't read defenses is going to go out there and help Cleveland with no pass catchers? I mean, maybe he does do something, but I again, to act like Shedeur is the answer here. Joe Burrow, you could put him on this roster right now. They're not that much better. And that's not a shot at Joe Burrow. That's just how bad these pass catchers are. That's how bad this offense is right now. There's not a move at quarterback that they can make that's truly going to help them. Brian Weaver brings up the fact Jerry Jeudy had 3 drops yesterday. I mean, right in his hands. I don't know what it is about receivers that can't catch the football. I mean, I think back to Odell Beckham Jr. when he came over from New York. I was super excited about it. Kev told me, no, it's not going to be good. He has stone hands. He's going to drop them. No, okay, he'll be fine. Baker Mayfield, get the ball to him right in his hands. Boom, dropped it. His dad, who's probably spent hours and hours on that mixtape to be made about all the mistakes Baker Mayfield made with Odell Beckham Jr., he conveniently forgot to leave out all the highlights of Odell Beckham Jr. dropping wide open passes left and right. No matter who the quarterback has been, no matter who the receivers are, Cleveland is always at the top when it comes to receivers leading the NFL in drop passes. And it doesn't make sense. It's not like it's just a particular group of receivers or it's a particular quarterback. This is a problem that goes all the way back to Baker Mayfield when he was here. Cleveland, during Baker Mayfield's time here, was top 3 in the NFL in drop passes. Deshaun Watson, Cleveland has the second most drop passes in the Deshaun Watson era when he's out there. Last year, we saw it. Amari Cooper led the league in drops when the Browns, somehow the Browns got a 3rd-round pick for Amari Cooper last year when he led the league in drops. Didn't make any sense, but good for Cleveland for getting a 3rd-rounder for him. And then this year, every year, their top wide receiver always seems to just have the inability to catch the football. So, I mean, and that's no excuse making, by the way. It's not as if, oh, man, the offense would be better if they catch those balls. Yes, but it's just like it's always something. Those are drive killers, whether it's a big penalty, a holding call to cost them just boneheaded mistakes that, to me, should not be happening if you're a well-coached team. And I'm not anti-Kevin Stefanski, but he's becoming a liability at this point because the team's starting to quit on him. I got to be fair here. I said this. I was like, I'm not anti-Zach Taylor, but if the Bengals quit on him, they need to move on from him. And the Bengals quit on Zach Taylor in weeks 2, 3, and 4. And I don't know if they're done quitting on Zach Taylor yet, but they at least were able to kind of show a little bit more interest and excitement after they were able to acquire Joe Flacco last week. So we'll see how that continues. But Kevin Stefanski, the Browns compete every single week. That's not the case right now. You have Myles Garrett, who I have zero sympathy for, by the way, making boo-hoo comments. Oh, it's very hard and blah, blah, blah. I don't feel bad for him. He knew what he was signing up for and now wants to play the victim card. Nah. Go count your $40 million and be quiet. You signed up for this. You don't get to be a victim. Okay, this isn't like, when people bring up certain teams wasting certain talent, this, that, and the other. Joe Burrow experienced success in Cincinnati. The team has let him down in trying to be able to sustain that. And yes, there's been some success in Cleveland, but not nearly enough for Myles Garrett to sit there, demand a trade because of all the losing, and then sign the contract extension because it's a lot of money. And then after signing, go right back to sulking and, we're losing a lot of. Well, what did you expect? He was a part of the charade to the media and the fans that something big was coming. And I would love to know what that big thing was that was coming to Cleveland to help this team win football games, because it ain't happening. It ain't happening. Ron Howard, he messages into the show, 50-plus pass attempts as a rookie in his first game is poor coaching, setting him up to fail. I don't mind him dropping back 50 times if he has guys that can catch the football. And, they trailed in a game. I mean, the other thing, too, is the Browns weren't moving the football efficiently on the ground either. They weren't able to get, when they did hand it off to Quinshawn and others, Steelers doing a good job, clogging up the middle, not really giving up anything. So they were trailing. You're not going to run the ball a lot when you're trailing. That's the other thing in Cincinnati. We saw Joe Flacco throw the ball a lot yesterday. and the Bengals can't run the football, so they're going to drop back a lot. When teams take the run game away from Cleveland, which Pittsburgh did yesterday, what do you expect them to do? I mean, it sounds like I'm defending them, but I'm not. But I think that it's too simplistic to say, I can't believe they dropped him back 50 times. Well, look at the situation of the game. When you're trailing, you're trailing in a game. You're not going to keep handing it off and handing it off and handing it off. I don't, that's just people wanting to pile on. I'm not mad that he threw 50 times. I'm mad at what he did with those 50 throws. I'm not mad that Stefanski called 50 passing plays. I'm mad at what resulted with those 50 passing plays. That's what I'm mad at. Running the ball over and over and over when you're trailing, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. I get people's questioning of that, but I feel like that's just nitpicking because everyone's pissed off, and I understand it. Brian Weaver says that they didn't lose because of poor quarterback play, poor game management, more likely. And I get it. People are checking out on Stefanski. But I'm telling you, I don't think there's a coach out there that is going to win with this offense as is. As is. In week 1 against Cincinnati, you had Cedric Tillman and Jerry Jeudy. You had all your weapons out there, and the offense was flowing way more consistently. Now, their margin for error was so thin because the only pass catchers they had were Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman. Tillman's out. Judy's just a mess. This team just can't. They don't have pass catchers. It's as simple as that. I love Harold Fannin Jr., love David Njoku, but they cannot be your top targets and receivers every single week. That's a problem. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show here on 1410 ESPN Radio. All right, so the Browns did something last week that many believe helps the Cincinnati Bengals, and I think one guy that truly believes it helps the Cincinnati Bengals and hurts him is Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin, well, he took some shots at Andrew Berry and the Cleveland Browns earlier today in a presser. So we're going to have that audio for you when we come back. And I think we can all come together on this as Bengals and Browns fans. We all agree. We may not like one another. We may hate each other's teams. We may enjoy when the other teams are losing. And I think the only reason that Bengals fans are enjoying themselves slightly is because while their team's losing, the Browns are losing. And the only reason that I'm not as miserable with the Browns struggling is because I know your team's struggling. But I do know this. I need your team to be very, very good on Thursday. I need Joe Flacco to throw all over that weak-ass defense in Pittsburgh. I need that on Thursday. I'm going to hoo-day it up. On Thursday, I will find a Bengals jersey or shirt or something. I will be wearing Bengals apparel on Thursday. I will be a Bengals fan on Thursday. That's how much I hate the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. So we'll step away for a few moments. When we come back, the audio of Mike Tomlin calling out the Browns, calling out Andrew Berry. We all don't like Mike Tomlin, but does he have a point here? And what was his point exactly? I guess is what I'm trying to figure out here. Why is this any concern of his? We'll get to all of it when we come back. The full audio clip, my reaction, your calls, by the way, 937-518-1410. All coming up next. The Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers.
The employer.
Justin Kinner Show. Right here on 1410 ESPN Radio.
Nine 518-1410, the number to call and jump in on the conversation. All right, so everyone knows I'm not a big Bengals supporter. Everyone knows I've basically made a career in this city of just knocking your favorite team, the Cincinnati Bengals, because I'm a Browns fan and I've never been a Bengals fan, and whatever. I can't stand the Cincinnati Bengals. However, I have started to gravitate towards them this week because of my disdain that seems to be trumping my disdain for the Bengals, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. And maybe because I'm a sore loser, just maybe that has something to do with it. But yesterday, obviously losing to Pittsburgh, it is what it is. Cleveland didn't get screwed. All right. There was no controversial call. They put up 9, they scored 3 field goals. They're 3-24 over the last however many games. I mean, this team is just not good. They're not able to score. Their offense is atrocious. Pittsburgh won because they're the better team. It's as simple as that. I have nothing about it. Doesn't mean I don't like Pittsburgh. And for whatever reason, after beating the Browns and preparing for the Bengals, Mike Tomlin had this to say about the Cleveland Browns trading Joe Flacco to the Cincinnati Bengals last week. Here's Mike Tomlin.
To be honest, it was shocking to me. Andrew Berry must be a lot smarter than me or us, because it doesn't make sense to me to trade a quarterback that you think enough of to make your opening day starter to a division opponent that's hurting in that area. But that's just my personal feelings.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing your personal feelings. Too bad I don't give a damn. Here's the thing. Who cares? I kept trying to, I've been scratching my head for hours now, trying to figure out why this crybaby would even go on that tangent to begin with in a press conference in a season that you better hope that, by the way, while the Bengals are trying to get back into the playoff picture with their 40-year-old quarterback, you better sure as hell hope that your 45-year-old quarterback can keep you in the playoff spot right now, because while history has shown us that the Steelers have a habit of getting off to a hot start and then being absolutely god-awful in the back half of the season, maybe, just maybe, and maybe he's a lot smarter than us, I don't know, maybe he can explain how a team continues to fail so often in the final months of a season. Maybe worry about that. Maybe that, I have no clue. I've been I get it. I questioned it as well when Cleveland traded Joe Flacco to Cincinnati. Why trade him in the division? But I thought about it. Cleveland's not going anywhere fast. Cleveland doesn't think Cincinnati's going to go anywhere anytime fast either. So if he goes there and helps them out and with the need, it's not like it's hurting Cleveland. It's not like, oh man, it's going to come down to Cleveland and Cincinnati in the final week of the regular season battling it out for that final playoff spot. That's not what's happening here. Cleveland got a 5th-round pick for a 40-year-old quarterback that was not going to see the light of day moving forward out on that football field. You got Deshaun Watson coming back within the next month and a half, possibly. You got Shedeur Sanders, who's next in line to get some opportunities out there. Joe Flacco was not going to play. No other teams had reached out to Cleveland about Joe Flacco, and as we're approaching the trade deadline, there was you couldn't risk not getting anything for him. If any team was willing to give up something for him, why not just get it? So I have no problem with them taking the 5th-round pick for Joe Flacco. I have no problem with it. Joe Flacco going to Cincinnati doesn't hurt Cleveland one tiny bit, and that's the only concern that Andrew Berry and Cleveland should have had. If we move on from Joe Flacco within the division, is it going to hurt us in the back end? No. They got a 5th-round pick for him, and they're a rebuilding team. They need all the draft picks they can get. That's all that matters. So shut up, Mike Tomlin, you crybaby, and focus, all right, focus on finding a way to keep this team hot heading into the back half of the season here in a few weeks, because that's where he stinks. That's where the Steelers team stinks. This was a 4-2 team last year, and everyone was crying, how could you move on from Justin Fields? Justin Fields is god-awful. Justin Fields and the New York Jets had -10 passing yards over the weekend. You crybaby Steelers fans. I can't believe we moved on from Justin Fields. That was a thing of the past. Oh, no, is what I say when I watch him play in the NFL. Good riddance. This team stinks. The Steelers tick me off, and they're running their mouth about Cleveland, and it doesn't impact them, or does it? Is this their way of saying, man, damn it, We wanted to beat up on a bad Bengals team with Jake Browning, and now because of Cleveland, we're going to lose on Thursday. That's exactly what's going to happen on Thursday, and I can't wait. I can't wait to watch. Like, Cleveland's not good enough to beat Pittsburgh right now. Get it? 100%. It stinks. I hate that Cleveland's bad, but it is what it is. I picked them to beat Pittsburgh because of Pittsburgh's deficiencies. But I know Cincinnati's going to win on Thursday. Now, some of you Bengals fans are probably terrified because it's the kiss of death. Anytime Kidder makes a guarantee, the only guarantees that I used to get right were back in the day when I'd pick the Browns to beat the Bengals because they always beat the Bengals, right? I think the Steelers are overrated. They're not an elite passing team. They can't run the football. Their offensive line's not great. And that defense, you can move the football in that defense. That defense is not the steel curtain. It's not the defense that Mike Tomlin's been hiding behind for years while throwing out embarrassingly bad quarterbacks, pretending that Mike Tomlin, I could win with those guys. And although he does finish with above 500 record at the tail end of every season, that's the only thing that Steelers organization has really turned into being known for is the fact that, well, they don't finish under 500, but they also get knocked out of the playoffs by the Browns. They also get knocked out of the playoffs by Tim Tebow. They also get knocked out of the playoffs by Blake Bortles and the Jacksonville Jaguars, not once, but twice. But by all means, the steel curtain, baby. Kick rocks. Who day? Go Bengals. Can't wait for Thursday. I saw, where'd it go? Where Chad said, I got one for you, Kinner Burrow jersey with the Super Bowl patch. You bring the Joe Burrow jersey. I'm going to wear the Joe Burrow jersey on Thursday. I will be who-daying it up all game long. I don't care. Joe Flacco, that's why. Why else? And help me out. Why would Mike Tomlin care about that? Joe Flacco going to Cincinnati does not impact the Steelers one bit unless that crybaby believes, man, Joe Flacco is going to lead them to a win at home against my Steelers on Thursday. That's what he's crying about, right? What other there's not one other explanation for why that crybaby is concerned about what the Browns did with Joe Flacco. The Browns didn't do one thing wrong with Joe Flacco, and here's why. The Browns knew they had a top 5 defense in the NFL. The Browns knew that they had a wide receiver that, 1,000-yard wide receiver last year in Jerry Jeudy. They knew they had Cedric Tillman that was going to be healthy. They knew they got some impact guys in the draft. Let's get Joe Flacco, a veteran quarterback, and let's see how the season starts. They beat the Green Bay Packers. They, obviously we know how ugly that Bengals game was. An extra point or a field goal, they're 2-1 to start the season, and it's a much different vibe, and Joe Flacco's still in Cleveland. But once they lost that game to Cincinnati, once they lost to Minnesota, once they lost all these games and the season was no longer a playoff caliber season, it didn't make sense to keep Joe Flacco. I respected the fact that Cleveland said, let's get a veteran quarterback in here and give this a shot. We've made the playoffs with Joe Flacco before. Let's see if we could do it one more time. Oh, we can't? Joe, thank you for your time. By the way, when Cleveland signed him, they signed him very late into free agency. It's not like anybody else signed him either. They didn't do him wrong. They sent him to Cleveland. Actually does a good job with that. They send guys to contenders. They don't try to send you somewhere like, oh, well, since you didn't help us, we're not going to help you. No, they're not going to get in the way of you going somewhere else. So they send him to Cincinnati where he's going to have elite weapons to throw the football to, something he didn't have in Cleveland. This is ridiculous. Mike Tomlin running his mouth at 4-1 because he's worried that this is going to be the start to, their typical downfall the rest of the season. Pittsburgh 4-1, sitting and everyone's just drooling over them. It's about to unravel in Pittsburgh. I think Joe Flacco and the Bengals win at home on Thursday. And I'm a Bengals fan on Thursday. Steve from Springboro might kill me. I don't care. That's how much I hate Mike Tomlin and the Steelers. This was none of their business. It had nothing to do with them. And the only reason that crybaby is concerned is because he knows, well, their best chance at winning was to go beat up on Jake Browning. Now they have a real quarterback they have to go up against, and they're going to lose on Thursday. That's why he's doing this. And then to throw Andrew Berry's name out there by to call him out by name. What? The downfall's about to start. And he knows it. He would have loved a 5-1 start against Jake Browning and the Bengals, but Joe Flacco kind of changes the energy of this team. I think Paycor is going to be electric on Thursday because you guys know the Bengals season is on the line on Thursday. You lose on Thursday, the season's done. Some of you may think it's done now, but you're 2-4 right now. You win on Thursday. You're 3-4, a game under 500, and you got some winnable games coming up. But the Steelers, they're at 4-1. They lose to Cincinnati in Cincinnati on Thursday. They're then 4-2. Then they got Green Bay. That's 4-3. Then they got the Colts. That's 4-4. The Chargers, that's 4-5. Oh, and then they got the Bengals again, and then they got the Bills, and then they got the Lions, and they got some tough teams coming up. This is the classic Mike Tomlin, get off to a hot start with little stupid sunglasses, and, he talks with his chest, and he's a leader of men, and the guys that he can't control, they just get rid of because he really can't control everybody like he pretends to, but that's besides the point. Pittsburgh, I can't wait. I can't wait for Thursday. It's probably the most excited I've ever been for a Cincinnati Bengals game in my life. I'm a Bengals fan on Thursday, and I cannot wait to watch them and Joe Flacco get the win. There you go. Ron Howard says that has Kinner curse all over it. Wear a Rodgers jersey if you want them to win. The curse is real. Chad says, I've said for years Bengals and Browns fans might not like each other, but we all hate the Steelers, and that is true. I hate Pittsburgh. I can't stand it. There's not one good explanation for his rant today about Cleveland trading Joe Flacco to Cincinnati. Don't you think it's more disrespectful just to bury Joe Flacco, a Super Bowl MVP veteran quarterback, on the bench behind rookies? Don't you think that's more disrespectful than setting him to a place where he could start, you moron? Man, I can't stand Mike Tomlin. Who day? I can't wait. Go Bengals. Let's go.
Justin Kinner Show. Right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. Now, back to the Justin Kinner Show. Right here on ESPN Dayton, 1410 Wing AM.
All right, hour number 2 here on a Monday. Hope everybody had a great weekend. Tough weekend for Browns and Bengals fans, but nonetheless, as we sit here right now and we wrap up this week's slate of games, Monday Night Football coming up later on tonight, of course. But now the Steelers or the Bengals will prepare for the Steelers coming up on Thursday night, and then of course Cleveland. They'll turn their attention with the home game as they welcome in the Dolphins. I mean, it's a battle of 1 and 5. It's a battle of 1 and 5. The 1 and 5 Browns welcome in the 1 and 5 Dolphins. Two sorry franchises right now. Something's got to give, though. And I swear if that ends in a tie, I'm done with football. It would just be the most Browns thing ever. They have a 1 and 5 Dolphins team who's atrocious coming in. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Like the Dolphins right now, they played a close one against the Chargers. They've a lot of their games have been close. They lost against the Patriots 33-27. They lost to the Panthers 27-24. They just lost to the Chargers 29-27. So, yeah, 1 and 5, but competitive. We'll see if the Browns can be competitive this Sunday at 1 o'clock with the Dolphins in town, nonetheless. But with that being said, so again, everyone's going to say I'm a homer when it comes to the Browns. Fine. I just think that this Browns team, I've finally accepted that it's just not good offensively. This team is just atrocious. I've seen it, but I was just hoping that week 2 and the development of, Dylan Gabriel, that we'd see something, that we'd see some major strides going forward. A lot of people, I was listening to Sports Talk over in Cleveland earlier today. A lot of people are making they're making a lot of noise regarding the fact that I can't believe Kevin Stefanski would take a rookie in his first road game, after he debuted in London, by the way, in his first road game and drop him back 52 times. A lot of that is situational as well. I'm not defending Stefanski because, he has to figure – he's an offensive-minded coach, and his side of the ball stinks. This is on him to figure out, and I don't think he can because I don't think the talent's there. But when you're trailing in a game, Pittsburgh takes a 3-0 lead early, and then a 6-0 lead, and then a 9-0 lead. And, then they score a touchdown right away in the third quarter. They add another one in the fourth quarter. Cleveland trailed that whole game, obviously. When you are trailing and your offense isn't very good, you have to try to cover as much ground as possible. I guess what I'm saying is okay, if you take away 7 to 8 of those pass attempts and you put them at the 45, what is the expected amount of times that Dylan Gabriel could have dropped back to pass yesterday that would have been acceptable to you? Dylan Gabriel, I don't think, is the long-term starter in Cleveland. I know. But there's a lot to be upset with Kevin Stefanski about, but complaining on the radio host, can't believe he dropped back Dylan Gabriel, rookie quarterback, his very first road start in Pittsburgh, and he drops him back 52 times. You were trailing the entire game. The plays that they desperately needed to pick up yardage, you're not going to get on the ground consistently. So this idea, I don't get it. It's not like this game. I mean, it was 9-6 or 9-3 at halftime. And then, of course, that touchdown that started the second half, it just felt like it was a hill that they weren't going to be able to climb. They trailed. They needed points. They struggled scoring points. It just has a trickle-down effect. Their inability to score points has a trickle-down effect on how they call the game, everything. It's as simple as that. So I think it's so stupid to get mad at the amount of times that Dylan Gabriel dropped back yesterday. Because, by the way, they averaged 3 yards a carry yesterday. They weren't moving the football on the ground either. So you want to take 10, 15 dropbacks away from Dylan Gabriel to hand it off and still result in and still have it end up in the same result, having to punt it away? You guys are just complaining to complain at this point. When he passes, you don't like the pass plays. The bottom line is all the results, whether they are short yardage, long distance, they stink. Whether they hand it off or not, they stink. This offense stinks. They can't score points. They can't move the football. When they do move the football, big key penalties bring it back. I would love to know how you could look this up. And I'm aging myself at 35. I'm starting to feel like I'm losing touch with the digital world a little bit. I know there's a way to look it up. I guarantee you Cleveland has to lead the NFL in third and long situations every time. I seem to look up to watch my team. It's 3rd and long. It's 3rd and 15. It's 3rd and 20. I don't think there's a team in football that has put themselves in worse positions offensively than the Cleveland Browns. It's as simple as that. Like, all the things going wrong in Cleveland, and sports talk radio hosts in Cleveland are boohooing and crying and complaining about, I can't believe they dropped him back 52 times. They were losing. They were trailing. You don't hand it off. You don't really have a balanced play sheet when you're trailing like the Browns when you know you can't score points. So who knows as far as that goes. Ron says, shouldn't be in that position with that defense. I mean, look, that defense the defense did its job. Pittsburgh was ass in the first half. They only put up 9 points. It was 9-3 at halftime. It's not like the defense didn't do its job. The defense held Pittsburgh to 3 field goals in the first half. The defense did its job. The offense failed them. 3 field goals in the first half and 2 touchdowns in the second half. And those touchdowns are given up because the defense is like, we are busting our tails. We held that team to 3 field goals. That team has a 40-plus-year-old quarterback. They can't run the football, and their defense isn't very good. We held them to 9 points in that first half, and it was like pulling teeth just to get the 3 points out of Cleveland that they ultimately got. The defense is going to start to quit on Cleveland moving forward, and that's going to get Kevin Stefanski booted quicker than anything, because the only thing Kevin Stefanski has going for him is the fact that they are going to have a chance to remain in games because of that defense. Theo, he never lets the run develop. What do you mean he never lets the run develop? Like, now we're just saying things to say them. Theo, this has actually been, they run the football very well. Yesterday, Pittsburgh took the run away. They stacked the box. They were not going to let Cleveland run the football, and they did it. And that's what teams are going to do moving forward. Cleveland is one-dimensional. They can only run the football, and they can be taken away because they don't have depth at running back. It's Quinshon Judkins, and that's basically it. Sampson has shown some light and some positivity here and there, but overall, it's not going to matter. You're mad at Stefanski because of the result of the game, but it's not anything he's doing. This team stinks. There is not a coach out there that is going to get more out of this offense when they have 0 pass catchers, and 0 good quarterbacks. Dillon Gabriel is not going to be the long-term starting quarterback in Cleveland, which I'm fine with because we're seeing it, and it makes the Browns' decision easier come the draft. Shouldn't have drafted him to begin with. That's the other problem. This is a GM problem. This is a organizational problem. Shedeur goes out there. What is Shedeur going to do differently that Dillon Gabriel is not? These guys aren't good. Cleveland's not good. 937-518-1410. Let's go to Ed. Ed, thanks for holding. You're on live, sir.
Hey, Justin, I watched a little bit of the Cleveland-Pittsburgh game yesterday, and when I turned the TV set on, I think Judy dropped the ball. I cannot believe those guys. I mean, you're a professional football player. How are you dropping all these balls?
It's always in Cleveland. It's not like an excuse, like, at all, because Cleveland's not good, but, like, they lead the league in drops almost every single year, or like right up there at the top. This goes back to when Odell Beckham Jr. was in Cleveland. This goes back to Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper last year, before he got traded to Buffalo, he led the NFL in drops. Everyone was ripping Deshaun Watson, and Deshaun wasn't good by any means, but they had chances to win games early. They should have beat the Eagles. There was a wide open pass that should have been a first down. Cleveland kicks a field goal. They win that football game. And their season kind of looks different. Amari Cooper dropped so many passes last year. And then this year, it's Jerry Jeudy. No matter what, Cleveland always has their number one target drop passes left and right. And it's regardless of the quarterback, too. It's not even the same quarterback. Baker throwing to Odell, Deshaun throwing to Cooper. Now it's obviously, Dillon Gabriel throwing to Jeudy, or Flacco to Jeudy. It didn't matter. Every year, this is a problem, and I don't even know where to narrow it down to. It's so wild to me.
Did Joku have a pretty good game yesterday?
He had some. It was more of the timing. I mean, he only had 3 catches for 28 yards, but the timing of when he made some of these plays, he got drilled in the ribs at one point pretty hard. but he was targeted 6 times. Harold Fannin Jr. was phenomenal. The tight end they got out of Bowling Green. I was super jacked when they drafted him. That was one of the guys I really wanted. I remember on the day of the draft, Kev said, who are some dark horse guys you want to see them get? I said, Harold Fannin Jr., the tight end out of Bowling Green, 7 catches, 81 yards. He's had some massive games as a rookie for Cleveland all year.
Right. You got to admit, Pittsburgh's going to be able to move the ball in the Bengals. Green Bay's offensive line, they were missing their left tackle. They were having some offensive line issues, but I tell you, the Bengals defense is horrible.
Oh, it's horrible. The Bengals, I mean, watching the way that Green Bay just methodically moved the ball up and down the field, whether it was the middle, sideline, run game, Cincinnati has a lot of problems. They have a lot of problems, and their best chance is offensively improving enough to keep them in it like last year. I don't expect him to look exactly like last year, but I think Flacco's a seasoned enough quarterback to potentially do that. I liked what I saw from him yesterday. The first half was rough, but that was his first go of it with that team. Second half, they made the adjustments, and I thought that they looked like a solid offensive unit, but they can't run the football. I
think 8 and 9 is about the best the Bengals are looking. The North is Pittsburgh's probably going to win 11 games maybe. So we'll see what happens. But I enjoyed talking to you, Justin. Just enjoy the rest of your show, buddy.
All right, appreciate you listening, man. Take care, Ed. Thank you.
All right, bye.
All right, 937-518-1410, the number to call and jump in on the conversation. Chad Kinser says, Mike Tomlin could. Sorry, buddy, I had to after the Tomlin rant. Yeah, I mean, and I got Cleveland's a mess. Cleveland's a mess. I'm willing to finally admit it. I was hoping because, I was being stubborn because not because I'm a homer, but that defense is so damn good. And this idea that Cleveland played horrible in the first half, any other team, if Pittsburgh would have been down 9-3 at the half, the narrative would be how good Pittsburgh's defense was to only hold a team to 3 field goals. And I'm not boo-hooing or need anyone to feel sorry for Cleveland because they are a mess. They've created this. But Cleveland has one of the most dominant sides of the ball in football and defense. Their defense is phenomenal. Cleveland's offense doesn't even have to be elite. It doesn't even have to, strike fear into every opponent in the NFL. But my goodness, they could at least resemble an NFL offense, right? And I don't want to hear about, they have a lot of rookies out there. That's really not the problem. It all comes down to they just don't have pass catchers. You could have got the 2 best wide receivers out of the draft, and they would be significantly better. I don't care about the rookie thing. Harold Fannin Jr. is phenomenal. But your tight end should not be your number 1 target on a team that has a quarterback like Dylan Gabriel. They have to be able to have weapons all around. You become easy to defend and easy to game plan against. Is this all on Stefanski? Stefanski needs to be held accountable, yes, but at the same time, firing because here's what happens: you fire Stefanski, you go get an offensive-minded head coach again, but you're going to get better offensive weapons in the offseason. Then it's going to look like they fixed it when the only thing they did was add better players. By the way, Zach Taylor looked like an absolute moron for 3 straight weeks. You get Joe Flacco, a competent quarterback, and now all of a sudden, look, he had his team ready to go yesterday. Come on. And some of you are still out on Zach Taylor. I get that. I'm not here to defend him. But my point is we give way too much blame to these coaches sometimes. Sometimes it really just is about the Jimmies and the Joes. And in this case, actually Joes. I mean, there's a lot of Joes we've been talking about. Joe Burrow, Joe Flacco. It really is about the Joes and the Joes. Could the X's and O's be better? Yes. But, you could have the best X's and O's of all time. But when the Jimmies and Joes and the Jimmies and whoever the hell else is filling in for Joe isn't available, it doesn't really matter. Cleveland is not good enough of an organization to say that if they had this coach, they'd be better. No, Mike Vrabel. I love Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel, they fired Stefanski and had Vrabel as a head coach. I'd have loved it. But again, Mike Vrabel, it's not like all of a sudden he's going to get these non-pass catchers to turn into pass catchers, right? You need pass catchers. You need wide receivers. They don't have any. Adam Selzner says that Stefanski has lost the locker room because he won't protect his players when a team like Pittsburgh is trying to hurt anyone they can each drive. And we know Pittsburgh is dirty as hell. Every year, Cleveland, whether it's Nick Chubb, whether it was Tillman last year, there's always a player that ends up out for the rest of the season when Cleveland goes up against Pittsburgh because they're a bunch of dirty scumbags. All right, their coach is a bum who's won a Super Bowl. I respect that, but I can't stand the coach crying earlier because Cleveland traded Joe Flacco. I'm still trying. Can anyone help me figure out why Mike Tomlin had a problem with that outside of the fact that he's pissed off because now he's probably going to lose on Thursday? The Browns do a lot of things that are wrong. Trading Joe Flacco away was not wrong. I think it's more disrespectful for a guy that has been in the league as long as he has, who's won a Super Bowl and a Super Bowl MVP, for all the accomplishments that Flacco has had. I think it's more disrespectful to bench him behind Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders on a losing Cleveland team. I think that's more disrespectful than trading him to a position where he can go start. So it's easy to beat up on the Browns. I get it. But what are we doing here? What did Cleveland do that was wrong in this particular case? I don't think they did anything wrong in this case. They believed they had enough to contend at the beginning of the season. That's why they went and got Joe Flacco. They thought with that offensive line that's been very good in the past and being healthy, along with the Quinshawn Judkins and the Sampson who they drafted most recently, they added depth at tight end. Tillman was healthy. Jerry Jeudy was a 1,000-yard wide receiver last year. With that defense, they felt they can go out there and contend. Tillman's hurt. Jeudy can't catch. The offensive line, penalties galore, beat up. Don't feel bad for him. A lot of teams are beat up. Okay. The Chargers, others don't feel bad for him. Right. The Joe Flacco can't, the offensive line wasn't elite when it came to protecting a 40-year-old quarterback. Like, a lot of things transpired that ultimately put the Browns in a position where we tried. So now the next phase of this is, let's see what we have with these rookies. Trading Joe Flacco away, they did nothing wrong. You moron. You're a moron. You're a straight up moron, Mike Tomlin, for thinking that the Browns did anything wrong trading him to the Bengals, because the only thing that trade did was put the Bengals in a position to potentially beat you on Thursday night, and I'm all here for it. Caleb, Tomlin told his players to keep Anthony Richardson upright the last time they played with Colts to avoid Flacco. Anthony Richardson got hurt. Flacco came in and torched them and won the game. Tomlin fears Joe. Like, that's the only thing I could think of, because Cleveland is a disaster of an organization, and you can come up with a list a mile long to rip them for all the mistakes that they have made. And I promise you, if we did a whole show on all the things that Cleveland has done wrong since returning to Cleveland, it would, and we did 3 hours on it every day, it would take me probably a year before we even got to them trading Joe Flacco in the division. They did nothing wrong. It's not the only responsibility that they have with that trade is to make sure it doesn't hurt Cleveland. And there's no way in hell it hurts Cleveland whatsoever. Ed, who called in earlier during the commercial break before I put him on, he was saying, well, see, I just don't get why Cleveland would help Cincinnati. They're technically not. If you send Joe Flacco to Cincinnati, you're helping Joe Flacco because you send him somewhere where he can go and start in probably his final year in the NFL. So they did good by him in that regards, because there's no other position in the NFL. There's no other team in the NFL that they could have sent Flacco to go be a starter. They didn't want to disrespect him by benching him behind a rookie, possibly two rookie quarterbacks. So they did right by Joe Flacco. That was first and foremost. The second thing, if you're going to send him in the division, you better make sure it doesn't hurt you on the back end. Cleveland looked at Cincinnati and said, we are two teams who are going nowhere fast right now. For us, it's all about developing the young players we have on this roster and positioning ourselves for the draft. And guess what happens? If you trade Joe Flacco to Cincinnati and they start winning a few more games, guess what? That helps Cleveland, because Cleveland then gets a better draft pick than them. Like this, they did nothing wrong by trading Joe Flacco. So it goes back to Caleb's point right here on YouTube about the fact that, he is afraid of Joe Flacco. And like I told you guys, I've never been a Bengals fan, but I'm a Bengals fan this week. I will hoo-day it up. I'm going to wear Bengals gear on Thursday. I'm going to get the Bengals imaging on the show. We are going to, it's going to be a Bengals fan show on Thursday, and I can't wait. I cannot wait to watch, the Bengals beat the Steelers on Thursday, because there's no reason for Mike Tomlin to have done what he did today, at least in my opinion. It's the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. All right, tomorrow, not ESPN, I'm sorry, Yahoo Sports, Jason Fitz. Wow, what a weekend, by the way, in college football. Indiana. I have not been a believer in Indiana because, and that's what I want to talk about when we come back, but we're going to talk a ton of college football on tomorrow's show with Jason Fitz from Yahoo Sports. Indiana did something over the weekend I'd been screaming for. I just need, when you are a program like Indiana and Illinois and others, I need to see it to believe it. You have a lot of wins. You have a little number in front of your name. That's cute. That's adorable. But I need to see you do something. Like I've always said, Ohio State is a program that I don't need to see them play somebody to know that they're somebody. I don't need to see Ohio State beat somebody to know that they're somebody. Indiana, Illinois, those are programs that I need to see them beat somebody to know that they're somebody. Illinois couldn't do it over the weekend, but Indiana sure as hell did. And that's what we're going to talk about when we come back. And a lot of noise was made on social media over the weekend that Indiana, should they be the number one team in the country? They're coming in at number 3 in the AP poll. Should they be at number 1? I thought that was a ridiculous comment. But when you start looking at it deep down, based on how we put these rankings together, yes, there's a small part of me that says Indiana could easily be at number 1. And we'll discuss when we come back. It's not that far-fetched when you really think about it. We'll discuss more when we come back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers.
I'm Ed Evans, CEO of Consumer Cellular. Ever wonder why Big Wireless wants you on unlimited?
All right, and we are back. Justin Kinner with you here, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. This just looks so weird. When we saw Indiana crack the top 5 last year, if you remember, Ohio State, Indiana had a top 5 showdown in Columbus last year, which was wild. It just didn't look right. And it didn't look right because it wasn't believable. And I said, look, for Indiana, it was one of those things where, they played teams last year. They had a very friendly schedule. And I thought a lot of their success was due to that friendly schedule. I didn't think that they were a team that was for real. And then when they play Ohio State, they didn't look for real. They got blown out. They looked, like they didn't belong in the same, class as Ohio State. And not a lot of teams do, to be fair. But then when they play Notre Dame in the playoff, the same thing. It's just like when you're playing a bunch of nobodies, it's one thing, and it's tough to get to the level where you're beating up on the nobodies. Because for so long, Indiana, who was the losingest program in the history of college football, and that's not a shot at them, it's statistically accurate. No team, no program has lost more games in college football than Indiana. They're the losingest program in the history of college football. So it's going to take a lot for me to buy in. And there are some programs, like a lot of people will bring up Ohio State's schedule at times and say, well, they haven't played anybody. Ohio State's the kind of program where I don't need to see them beat somebody to know that they are somebody. That's why I don't really beat up on other teams' non-conference schedules too much, because like Penn State this year, now this is maybe a little, weird because they fired their head coach, but the bottom line is Penn State, they weren't crazy about putting any major teams on their non-conference schedule because they believed the Big Ten was challenging enough. And to their credit, I didn't have a problem with that. Penn State, and again, let's take out the recent run that they're on, because you guys are going to let right now what's going on with Penn State cloud the point I'm trying to make. Penn State's one of those programs where, we knew that they're good. They recruit at a high level. I knew that it's a good program. I don't care who they play in the non-conference. They just need to start beating the good teams in conference play and all that. We'll get to Penn State in a moment. But Indiana is a program that I need to see beat somebody to know that there's somebody. And last year, I just never saw it. They beat a bad Michigan team that was reeling off of a cheating scandal and moving on from Harbaugh, or Harbaugh moving on from them. Or, basically it was the sports version of fleeing the country is what Harbaugh did. Harbaugh fled the country before the cops got him, basically. And that's what ultimately happened. So basically, to compare it to a sports analogy, he has a warrant for his arrest the second he tries to get back into the country, back into the college football world, of course, but he'll never come back. That's it is what it is. But that sorry program had enough going on that it was distracted with cheating to win a national championship that, of course, they lost to Indiana and they deserved it. But that's besides the point. To Indiana's credit this year, they played Illinois a few weeks ago, and that was a top 25 showdown, and didn't just beat Illinois, but beat them down. I mean, just absolutely annihilated them, embarrassed Illinois. And, and it was 63-10. And that was the first real team that they had faced all season. They beat Iowa 20-15. And again, after putting up 63 against Iowa, a top 10 opponent at the time, good for them. That was a top 10 win for Indiana. They needed that. They got it. But then Oregon was coming up, and I'm like, well, this is where they get the doors blown off by Oregon, and then they're going to go on to beat UCLA and Maryland and Wisconsin, and they're going to be a double-digit win team, and Indiana's going to have a good season, and Cignetti's a good story. But, they're not good enough to compete with the powerhouses. But they beat one of the Big Ten powerhouses, the number 3 team in the country, the Oregon Ducks, Indiana, 30-20 the final over the weekend. And now you look at Indiana, their schedule is kind of smooth sailing from here, assuming that Indiana's for real, and they proved it with the win at Oregon over the weekend. They are at home against Michigan State and at home against UCLA. They have to play at Maryland. I thought this was going to be an impossible game, having to play at Penn State, but Drew Aller's out for the year. They fired James Franklin. Penn State seems to be on a free fall right now. Indiana could find themselves realistically in the Big Ten championship game. How wild would that be? They did it last year. It was a Cinderella type of situation. Just like in college basketball, you'll get those March Madness, you'll get those teams in the NCAA tournament that make a run in the tournament. Like, Dayton getting to the Elite Eight. No one views Dayton as like a legitimate Duke or North Carolina or any programs like that, right? But they're just a feel-good story for the month of March. They're a cute little Cinderella team, and then they got to go back to, trying like crazy just to compete in the A10, right? Like that's what I thought Indiana was. I thought they were a cute little underdog story, and they were just going to have to go back to competing with the middle of their conference. But no, they're back, and they're even louder than last year. They're even better than last year. And they just beat the number 3 team in the country after a few weeks ago putting up 60 and beating a top 10 team in the country by 50. Now, one point I want to make before I get to this next point, or to set up this next point. When it comes to the college football playoffs and those rankings, the rankings are always about the best resumes, not the best teams. The best teams aren't ranked in college football. The best resumes are. And right now, when you start thinking about where Ohio State's going to be here, Ohio State's undefeated, Indiana's undefeated. They're the number 3 team in the country. Ohio State's the number 1 team in the country. The college football playoff has always done a good job in the first poll when it comes out to they want to differentiate themselves from the AP rankings. They don't want to just take the AP rankings and slide them over and slap the playoff logo on it. They want to put their own rankings together based on their criteria. And I believe if the college football playoff rankings came out today, that the number 3 team in the country, according to the AP, would actually be the number 1 team in the country, according to the College Football Playoff Committee. Because, again, the College Football Playoff rankings, it's not about the best teams in the country. It's about the best. I mean, that matters, but it's about the best resumes. And I don't think there's a team in the country that has a better resume than Indiana, as wild as that sounds. They don't have a crazy non-con opponent, but they beat their opponents down. They played Kennesaw State 156-9. They played Indiana State 73-0. They played top 10 Illinois 63-10. They just took on the number 3 team in the country, or at the time, on the road. Have you? Even if it was home, it's not like it would be. I don't want to say it'd be less impressive, but I think what makes this more impressive is the fact that they went on the road to beat the number 3 team in the country in Oregon, and they won by double digits. They put 30 points up on the board. It wasn't an ugly, it wasn't an ugly game. Like, they out-finessed and out-muscled Oregon. I mean, to me, I think Indiana, they're not better than, I would not take them over Ohio State. I don't think they're more talented than Ohio State, but I think as we sit here right now, I think that there's not a team out there that has a better resume than Indiana. Shaw says Miami. I disagree. I mean, I know that they're the caliber of teams that like the brands that they beat. Florida, it's not good. Florida State ended up being a fluke, right? Notre Dame, a 2-loss team. That's a good win, but that was the number 6 team at the time. They just went to Oregon and won at Oregon. South Florida, whatever. Like, I disagree. I don't think Miami's resume is more impressive than Indiana's. I just don't. I think the fact that they have, and again, it's not, you could say, well, they beat Illinois. They didn't just beat Illinois. They ran them off the field. And keep in mind, Illinois just played Ohio State. Ohio State's the number 1 team in the country. We thought they had the best win in all of college football, beating at the time, the number 1 team in the country, Texas, to kick off the season. Texas isn't that good. And Arch Manning, who's in every underwear and Fruit Loop commercial and everything else that you can imagine, he's not good. He's a bum, okay? He's a bum. He makes a lot of money. He's richer than I'll ever be, and he knows more football than I ever will, but he's a bum. All right, Texas ended up not being as good as we thought, not as impressive as a win as we thought. Solid win, not as impressive. The next most impressive win that Ohio State has is Illinois. And Illinois gave Ohio State more resistance than they gave Indiana, who made Illinois look like just a weak non-conference opponent. And then to go to Oregon and win by double digits there, I'm sorry, but I think that the second most impressive resume would be Miami. I think if the college football playoff rankings came out today, I think Indiana's 1, I think Miami's 2, and Ohio State's 3. Now, if you ask me who I think the best teams in the country are, I think Ohio State's 1, Miami's 2. I think you could put Alabama right up there. I wouldn't put Indiana in my top 3 best teams in college football list, but based on how the rankings work, it's all about resumes. Indiana has a better resume than Miami. They have a better resume than Ohio State. Don't get that confused. Everyone wants to say, well, the rankings show that that's the second best team or third best team in the country. Indiana is not the third best team in the country, but they're undefeated. Illinois, if we're going to give Ohio State credit for beating a top 25 Illinois team, then we got to give Indiana credit for not just beating at the time, top 10 Illinois team, throttling them. Curt Cignetti, he drives me nuts, but he drives me nuts because I don't like when people act like that and they can't back it up. He's backing it up. He's backing it up. He's talking, and now they're walking. And that makes Curt Cignetti my favorite coach in college football right now because I love coaches like that. This is why I get so sick of the Deion love, because Curt Cignetti is everything that people want Deion to be. People want, like, Deion does a lot of talking, and he's not doing a lot of walking. And that may sound insensitive considering the health stuff he's dealing with. But I mean, if you're going to talk the talk, you got to walk the walk. It's from that phrase right there. So for the sensitive people out there, if you're boo-hooing about that, cry me a river, go away, turn off the dial. I don't really care. Bottom line is Deion Sanders runs his mouth and he talks so much crap, but there's nothing to back it up. No quality wins. No, like, you know what I mean? Like, no, their big highlight during the Shador era was the close bowl loss. Like, Curt Cignetti, everything that we try to build up about Deion Sanders to Colorado, about look what he's done in Colorado. Look what Cignetti has done with the losingest program in the history of college football. Everything that people try to build up Deion Sanders to be, Curt Cignetti's that dude. He took the worst program in the history of college football, and he took them to the playoff in year 1. And in year 2, has them back in the top 5 for the second straight year, but just went on the road to beat the defending Big Ten champions from last year, who was the number 3 team in the country this year, went to their place and blew them out. So it is what it is. Shaw says, we don't know how good Oregon is. Oh, stop. We're not going to do that. Because Indiana wins, now we don't know how good Oregon is. This isn't about this is like, Shaw, you do this all the time. What we know is what we know now. And what we know now at this point is Oregon was the number 3 team in the country, and Indiana just went and beat them by double digits at their place. Yeah, but Oregon, when the season's done, they could be. Then we'll have a different take at the end of the season. But based on what we know now, just like right now, I change my tune as the information comes in. I change my opinion as more. I thought Ohio State's win over Texas, I thought that was the freaking coolest thing in the world. You kick off the season with debuting a new quarterback against the number 1 team in the country, who's the national championship favorite. Man, it doesn't get any better than that. Well, it could have gotten better than that because Texas actually isn't that impressive. They're not that good, and Arch Manning stinks. So it could have been a little more impressive, but kudos to Ohio State for the brand that they put on their schedule to kick off the season as opposed to a bunch of nobodies. So at the time, I thought that was great. As I sit here now, not as impressive as it was a few weeks ago. And it sure as hell is not as impressive as anything Indiana has done to this point. Because based on what we know now, what Indiana has done is more impressive than Ohio State. Doesn't mean they're better. And I'm not going to sit there and diminish what Indiana did because Oregon might not be as good as we think down the road. As of right now, Oregon's the number 3 team in the country, and they're undefeated, or they were undefeated. They were at home, and Indiana blew them out by double digits on their place. I'm not going to sit there and water down what someone just did because of what might be the case a month or 2 months from now. Oregon's a good football program. They check off every box, offensively, defensively. They proved it last year. They recruited a high level. They obviously have the NIL funds to just plug and chug and keep on going. And Indiana's proven that they can be a contender with these guys, and they proved it over the weekend. I think that's pretty dang cool. And like I said, kudos to Cignetti because he's a guy that I didn't care for at the beginning because like Deion, there's a lot of talking. And unlike Deion, the talking is followed up with a lot of winning and big wins and delivering in big key moments. Colorado hasn't won one single thing. They just win the press conference. Deion's undefeated in press conferences, but he's an overrated football coach. And don't tell me, well, Colorado, it's hard to win over there. Oh, yeah, I'm sure, because Indiana is just a freaking hot spot for football, right? You know what I mean? Like, that's the dumbest thing. Curt Cignetti didn't just come in and build up some old successful program and back into something. Colorado used to be something. Indiana has never been anything. They are the worst team in the history. They're the worst program in the history of college football. And Cignetti, man, Cignetti's run at Indiana has been way more successful and way better than anything Deion has done in Colorado. The only thing he did was he used his salesmanship and he did a con job on the entire university to somehow get his kid's jersey hung up in the rafters. And somehow, some way, that man is going to con his way into coaching the Cleveland Browns next year to take over so he could play his son, Shador Sanders. And I can't wait. I can't wait to see Shador go 3 straight seasons in Cleveland, going 9-8 and having his jersey retired here in the next 5 years. Man, oh man. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. We'll be right back right here on Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM.
Come see us at Carol Works Tire.
All right, as we're about to wrap up the show here today on a Monday, hope everybody had a great weekend. If you missed the start of the show, I'll just quick summary. I'm a Bengals fan this week. I can't stand Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin came out with some boohoo crybaby stuff about, basically trying to. There's a lot of things you can, criticize the Browns for. Trading Joe Flacco is not one of them. And, well, here, take a listen. So Mike Tomlin earlier today had this to say about the Browns.
You know, to be honest, it was shocking to me. Andrew Berry must be a lot smarter than me or us, because it doesn't make sense to me to trade a quarterback that you think enough of to make your opening day starter to a division opponent that's hurting in that area. But that's just my personal feelings.
Well, your personal feelings, you're a crybaby, Mike Tomlin, because it's as simple as this. Like, why do the Browns need to run it by you first? Do they need to have your feelings in mind before they traded Joe Flacco away? They did nothing wrong. He's a 40-year-old quarterback that has a legendary, well, I mean, not legendary, but he's had a Hall of Fame caliber career. He's a Super Bowl MVP. He led the Browns to the playoffs. He wins everywhere he goes. The bottom line is it was more disrespectful to sit him behind two rookies as opposed to sending him somewhere where he can not just go and play, but start. Mike Tomlin's only upset because now the Bengals, who he was going to have an easy win against with Jake Browning at quarterback, they're going to have to actually work for it, which is something that they haven't really had to work for, which is something they haven't really had to do throughout the first month of the season. They beat a bad Jets team, right? They beat the Vikings with a backup quarterback. They beat the Browns with all rookies and no offense. They beat the Patriots early in the season as before their offense really started to take place. Like, and they won ugly in every single one of those, which is how Pittsburgh wins, yes. But let's not sit here and act like this is a guy that wants to be truly challenged. He loves the fact that they take advantage of bad teams. Now the bad team, thanks to Cleveland, has a good quarterback, and now that he knows their defense isn't any good, Pittsburgh's. So I'm a big Bengals fan coming up on Thursday. I'm going to hoo-day it up. I will find a Bengals shirt, jersey, something. I will be a huge Bengals fan on Thursday. I can't wait to watch Joe Flacco and the Bengals beat the Steelers on Thursday night. I cannot wait. Let's go. Reaction to Buckeye fans mad at me because I said I think Indiana. If the rankings came out, if the college football playoff selection show was tonight. Remember, the playoff rankings are always different than the AP. It's not about the best teams. It's about the best resumes. I think Indiana, with what they did on the road at number 3 Oregon over the weekend, not just to win, but to put up 30 points, to win by double digits. I think you on top of the fact that when they played a top 10 Illinois team a few weeks ago and they put up 60 on them and won by 50, I don't think there's been teams who have faced bigger branded teams more consistently, but no one has looked more impressive in these big games than Indiana. Ohio State's win over Texas doesn't look as sexy anymore. All right. Ohio State did beat Illinois, yes, but they didn't look as dominating against Illinois as what Indiana did. So I think if the first playoff rankings came out tonight, I think Indiana would be ahead of Ohio State because of how they do it. The playoff rankings are based on the best resumes, not the best teams, because the top 10 teams is drastically different. I think you got to throw out records at times for the top 10 teams. You know what I mean? But the rankings are different. It's all about resumes. We only have a few minutes. Let's go to Shaw. Shaw, you're on live, sir.
How you doing, bud?
Another day in paradise.
So what I was getting at is you can't discredit Ohio State's win and all these other teams' wins and then not look at what Oregon did against Penn State and not discredit that either. That's all I was saying.
About
what, what do
you mean?
I'm not taking anything away from what Indiana did. I'm not taking anything away from Indiana beating Oregon, but Oregon's win against Penn State doesn't look as impressive as what it was 3 weeks ago because Penn State now is absolute dog water. And so we don't know what Oregon is. Yes, they were ranked at the time that they played them, but at the time Ohio State beat Texas, they were number 1 in the country. So if we're going to go at the time they played them, then Ohio State beat the number 1 team in the country.
No,
we can't use one set of rules for one team and then completely disregard it for all the other teams that we're talking about.
I'm not just like what we know about. I am doing that now because I just said Texas is not as sexy of a win now because we've seen how bad Texas is. We haven't seen Oregon look bad. Oregon just lost in a competitive game against Indiana.
Who's Oregon beat?
Oregon was the number 3 team in the country based on what we've seen. And defensively, top 10 defense, top 10 offense statistically. Plus, you look at their recruiting and everything they did when it comes to the transfer portal. We know that it's not just a simple win-loss resume thing when it comes to these teams. It's about the full picture. And that's why Oregon, who moved their way up the ranks, they deserve to be where they were at. Are you saying that they don't?
I don't know what they are. I have them at number 9 in my rankings right now, and I don't know what they are.
But if you truly don't know who they are,
everything-
why are they even on your rankings if you don't truly know who they are then?
Because preseason we thought they were good, just like we thought Penn State was good, just like we thought Texas was good, just like we thought Alabama. I mean, Alabama's coming back now, but this is why we play the games. Like, you can't use transitive properties from 3 weeks ago.
We're not using transitive properties. Oregon is still good. Oregon has not fallen off a cliff because when Penn State lost to Oregon, I didn't say that they were bad. Penn State, I didn't say Penn State was bad for losing to Oregon.
No,
we now say Penn State's bad because they lost to 0-4 UCLA. They lost to Northwestern. But, we didn't sit there and say Penn State's bad because they lost to Oregon. We now know they're bad because of what they've done since. If Oregon goes on a tailspin and they lose to Rutgers and Wisconsin, then yes, they're bad. But from what we know right now, that's a good win for Indiana. That's a huge win for Indiana.
And the Texas win is still good for Ohio State.
It's solid, not as impressive as it's not as impressive as what Indiana has done based on what we know to this point of the season.
I will bet you whatever you want to bet that Ohio State's the number 1 team in the country when the college football playoff rankings come out. I'll bet you whatever you want to bet.
If Indiana's undefeated, if they're undefeated when those first polls come out, because that Penn State win is going to mean nothing now for Ohio State when that gets here. So when that happens, because Ohio State's just playing nobodies between here and when that first poll comes out now, so it's just about resumes up to that point.
Going back a couple years ago when Georgia was the unmitigated best team in America, they were the number 1 team on the college football playoff throughout. It'll be the same thing with Ohio State. There is no one playing football like Ohio State in America. No one. They are the best team in the country. It's no ifs, it's no ands, it's no buts. I will bet you whatever you want that in the first college football playoff ranking that Ohio State is number 1.
It's a separate argument of who I think that, and by the way, I agree. I think Ohio State is the best team in the country. The polls, though, are always about the sexiest resumes. And that's what this comes down to.
But when it comes down to it, there's no way. There is no way. There's no way Ohio State's going to be number 2 and Indiana will be number 1 when they're going to put those two against each other. Yes, the same team that Indiana dog walked all the way across Bloomington, Indiana, Illinois, Ohio State just went into their house and beat them by 20.
Yep.
And beat them by 20. So
not 50.
It's not that.
Not 50. Okay. Right? Not 50.
Not 50,
but
they controlled the game the exact same way that Indiana did. Congratulations, you beat them by 50. Okay.
That's not a little accomplishment. That's not nothing. That's not a little. It is a beauty contest. That's how this has always worked. This is not the NFL. The beauty contest element has always existed in this. Style of play has always mattered. The style points have mattered. Urban Meyer and so many legendary coaches have said they hate that it's a part of it. Urban Meyer talked about the fact that Ohio State doesn't make the playoffs in 2014. Just because they beat Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game, that's not why they made the playoff. They made the playoff because they beat them by 50. That's stuff matters. Absolutely, it matters.
When you are going against teams of like records and you don't know what differentiation properties are, yes, that's when the beauty contest comes in. We will see what Ohio State and Indiana look like on the same field. We will see what Ohio State looks like against all these other teams that Indiana faces. And we've already seen one comparison.
And that's based on what we know now. You're saying we will see. My opinion today, as we sit here on October 13th, is based on what we have seen to this date. I'm not preparing my show for 2 months from now. I prepare a show for today. And today, and that's why I said today, if it came out, Indiana would be right there at the top ahead of Ohio State. They're not the better team, but they are undefeated. They are playing as good as anybody right now, and they have their resume is more impressive than Ohio State's at this point.
And I just highly disagree.
Based on what? Based on what?
Based on Ohio State beat the number 1 team in the country. They've looked the best in the entire
team that was just out of the top 25 in the last rankings.
And they just beat Oklahoma, who was a top 10 team in the country.
And do you believe that Oklahoma is actually that good? Because I don't. Do you believe that that's where they're going to end up? I'm going to play your game now. Or do you believe that they're going
to? We can sit here. We can do this with every single team. That's why
Texas lost
matter.
to Florida, though. But Texas lost. Again, it's a resume thing. The teams that Ohio State has beaten have not now no longer as impressive as Indiana's.
because Indiana beat an Oregon team at home.
The number 3 team in the
place,
country at their place by 10 double digits.
By 10 against an Oregon team who we don't even know what their best win is.
Oregon was the number 3 team in the country. They were the home
Why?
team.
Based on what? Based on what?
Based on that, I don't know. So there's the number 1, there's the number 2, and then there's a 3 that
Based
comes after
on what?
2 between
Based on
4.
what?
So
I know how to
Texas.
count.
Okay,
you can
then
get
fine.
Get
I'm not getting snotty all you want. If you said
fact.
Ohio State beat the number 1 team in the country back in week 1, based on what then?
Because they were ranked number 1.
Because Oregon is ranked number 3.
Manning was supposedly the best quarterback in the country.
Oregon has more basis to be ranked number 3 in the country than Texas did number 1 to kick off the season.
We have results on the field.
Exactly.
We don't know who Oregon.
Exactly, which means the win over Texas was
we don't know who
pointless.
Oregon beat.
There was no number 1 team in the country.
We don't know.
But we know who Oregon is, and Oregon's a good football team.
We don't know who Oregon is.
We do know who
is.
Point. So
we do not know who.
So
Oregon
when you
is.
put your rankings together, you said you put out your rankings, you had them in your top 10. Well, I put them in the top 10. If you don't know a single freaking thing about them, why have them in your top 10?
We know they're better than the
based on what?
Teams behind them.
Based on what? Based on what?
Come on, dude. You're being dumb right now.
Oh, I'm being. How am I being dumb? You're putting a team in the top. You're like that female voter that didn't even have any clue who. Like
there's other teams that have 2 losses. They're better than them. There's other teams that have 2 losses. They're better than them.
Based on what? You said you don't know. You don't know anything about Oregon.
UCLA.
You said you don't know.
They're better than Texas. They're better than LSU. Yes, we know that they're better than them. Yes. Are they better than the teams that are ahead of them? No, we don't.
Oh, well, then when we get there, my opinion will shift based on what we know now.
Trash.
Based on what we know now, Indiana.
Based on what we know now, Oregon hasn't beat anyone.
They were the number 3 team in the country.
Congratulations.
Congratulations to Texas for being the number 1 team in the country when you were just using that to make your point.
Hence why there shouldn't be any rankings until.
Hence it doesn't matter. Then you shouldn't have used that as one of your arguments.
We can sit here and do this round and round and round and round.
No, we can't, because I'll just hang up on you like I'm going to do now. The point is, Indiana went to the number 3 team in the country and won by double digits at Oregon. They faced the same team that Ohio State just faced yesterday, and they didn't just beat them more impressively than Ohio State. They put 60 up on them, and they don't have a Jeremiah Smith. They don't have a Julian Sain, the number 1, QB prospect in the country. They don't have any of the. They don't have the elite defense that Ohio State has. They don't have a Matt Patricia. They don't have. Based on what we know, with what we've seen with our eyes, resume right now, Indiana has the best resume in the country. And if the playoff rankings came out today, they would be the number 1 team based off that, because it's not about the best teams in the country. It's about the resume. And Indiana has the best resume. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. We're out of time. We'll do this again tomorrow. Until tomorrow, the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. We'll settle this debate with Jason Fitz from Yahoo Sports on tomorrow's show when we kick it all off. We'll talk then. Thank you, everybody.